This week is extremely special for everyone here at YMB and BTC. In today's episode, number 11, we have the first guest ever to join us on the show. Stephen McCaskill is the CEO of Amagi Metals, a large bullion dealer that accepts Bitcoin. He's with us today to tell us what Bitcoin has done for his company. He just recently started accepting some altcoins, and we're interested in that as well. Mr. McCaskill is also an anarchist, so we chat some about the apolitical nature of Bitcoin and what it means for the world. This is easily our favorite episode yet, and we're glad you're tuning in. Before we get started, I want to encourage you to check out our website, yumiandbtc.com, and make use of the tipping addresses and social media links. Your hosts today are Tim Baker, John Stewart, and myself, Daniel Brown, and we're joined today by a very special guest, Stephen McCaskill. Here we go! Welcome everybody to YMB and BTC. This is going to be episode 11. It's going to be probably our favorite episode so far. We're excited to have our first guest on the show. His name is Stephen McCaskill. He's the CEO of Amagi Metals. Amagi Metals is a bullion dealer. Tim and I have used him several times, his company. We're extremely excited to have him on the show, more than excited. Today's Monday the 10th, March 10th. That we're recording, and you guys will all be hearing this for the first time on Thursday the 13th. And we're just going to jump right into the interview. So, Mr. McCaskill, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm pleased to be here.
I'm just going to start off with probably anyone's first question. What gets you interested in Bitcoin, or what did get you started into Bitcoin? Why do you like Bitcoin, and how did it get you to where you are?
Yeah, so when I was younger, I started getting an interest in Austrian economics. And in high school and college, I went to school for economics and had a big interest in sound money. And when I graduated from college with a degree in financial economics, I had my business, Amagi Metals, and having an interest in free markets and individual liberty and sound money, I was drawn to Bitcoin when my friend mentioned it to me in 2011. And so I did some research and fell instantly in love with it. And from there, I started accepting it through our website.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you mentioned sound money. I've heard that a lot, out of your mouth and on your website. You talk about sound money all the time, which it sounds like a great thing, but I want to know what is sound money to you? Where'd the idea come from, and what makes money sound in your eyes?
Yeah, I would say that sound money is anything that's a medium of exchange that is chosen by the free market or by the market. So it doesn't require the use of force or coercive monopoly to give itself status as money. So pretty much it could rule out a lot of government fiat currencies as sound money, but would rule in a lot of different commodities. And Bitcoin can be seen by many as a commodity. Yeah,
that's great. And that's true. You brought up ideas about force and you don't want force and everything. And that's, the podcast is about Bitcoin, but we get into politics all the time. Because that is an important part of Bitcoin is the political aspect of it and everything like that. So, it depends what field you're in, and everybody has their different niche, and they have different uses for Bitcoin. And, anybody could argue as much as they wanted about what Satoshi's original intent was and if he had political ideas in mind. But it definitely is great for a lot of political ideas. And Tim, John, and I all have different views, and we've talked about them before, but we definitely lean towards all those ideas: libertarianism, anarchism, voluntarism is what Tim likes to say, and that's pretty important to us. What do you think about the politics of Bitcoin? Can it change the world? Is it good for the world? Well, obviously, I think you would agree that it is good. But what do you think it can do for the world politically?
Well, I think that Bitcoin is apolitical, meaning it doesn't really have any. Well, it's not conservative or liberal or anything in those terms, but I think that it is revolutionary where it basically privatizes your bank account, where you don't need to use a third party. So not only does it, I think it will end the banking cartels, but it will also cut off a huge portion of the government's ability to tax and to generate revenue, and to use the money supply or expand the money supply to create inflation, to fund programs such as Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and of course the massive military programs abroad. So I think that Bitcoin has a lot of potential to end 90% of government functions, if not more, and to cut out the middleman or the banking cartels. So I think it has a lot of potential.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. I don't know if we've ever used the word apolitical before on the show, but I think that's a good way of describing it. Tim, I'm going to let you comment here, because you're kind of, I tend to see you as the biggest politically minded out of the three of us. Do you agree with him, and what do you think about those political ideas?
Well, I mean, yeah, I agree with him. If I haven't said the exact phrase is apolitical, I've said something like it, but maybe it's when we were talking about like morality and Bitcoin, that Bitcoin, just like any kind of currency, is not bad or good, although you could argue that some of the government fiat currencies, or all government fiat currencies, are inherently bad. But the currency itself doesn't pick or choose what it does or what it doesn't do. But at least Bitcoin, you can say it's apolitical because it isn't backed by a certain country. It is just a pure, I mean, one of the functions is being a way to exchange things. But yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that about it being apolitical. One of the times we were talking about, you said that it was, Daniel, you said that Bitcoin almost had a democratizing, I think that's how you say that, effect on the world, because it puts us on a level playing field or something with everyone else. But I didn't really agree with that. I said that in Bitcoin there is no, like, it's not a democracy where you go and we're going to elect our leaders, or I guess in a money sense you'd say elect our bankers or something like that. I don't have to put my money where 51% of people say that I have to. I get to put my money wherever it is, even if that includes putting my money in Mount Gox. I'm allowed to make that bad decision. And veering way off onto that, we've talked about this before, but everyone's saying how terrible it was for Mount Gox to fail. And I mean, I feel bad for people who lost their money, but that's the market cleaning up a bad actor, or just a bad business that wasn't running their stuff well, or wasn't taking the proper precautions with stuff, whatever it was. So, yeah, I'd agree with everything he said.
I guess you're right about the whole democratizing effect. I don't know if that's a word, but we're using it. I mean, I never really thought about voting rights and things like that, but I did say and still hold that it puts everyone on a level playing field, because nobody can do anything with Bitcoin that other people can't do, and things like that. So, but yeah, that's important. And I know Andreas M. Antonopoulos has all kinds of ideas about how Bitcoin can benefit the other 6 billion. And that is something that should be possible, and hopefully we'll see that play out.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one thing. This, Mr. McAskill, you're an anarchist, would you say that?
Yes.
Okay. So, I don't think we've ever talked about this on the podcast, but Tim and I always talk about how it seems like people have a really hard time letting go of statism. And like we saw this in ourselves too. It's kind of like you start to see all this bad stuff that happens with government and with economics and all kinds of things like that. And you start to get this sense that maybe it's not the best system in the world, but it's really hard to let go of that. And then at some point, you kind of just decide that you have to be an anarchist because you just can't deal with the issues. So how did you become an anarchist?
Um, that's a good question. I would say that I was brought up that way. My dad understood Rothbard and was pretty active in South Africa and, with economics and the understanding of individual liberty. So he taught me how to think rationally and think for myself. But I have my own theory in terms of that, and it ties in. I don't know if you've ever heard of Richard Dawkins, but he coins this term called a meme. And there are these meme pools, which are kind of like gene pools, but for ideas. And he uses the argument for religion, but I like to apply it to government, where the idea of anarchy is not really an idea. It's the absence of an idea. It's just a natural state. So all the ideas of the various governments, the idea of democracy, all of that jazz, are ideas. And so people are clinging to these ideas, and they can't see that if I give up this idea, then it's the absence of the ideas. It's just a natural state. And it's very difficult for people to let go and see that natural state. So that's my philosophy or theory behind why people have have difficulty letting go of the ideas of statism.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think I've ever heard somebody explain it quite that way, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I haven't talked about it too much, and I've never really heard anyone else talk about that, but that's my own little theory.
Yeah. It's also cool that you were kind of brought up that way, because I think Tim and I have talked about this. Like I said, there are points where you're kind of like, everybody around you is still a statist, and you kind of question yourself. You're like, am I the crazy one, or is it them? And it's so hard to get people to even entertain the idea of anarchism.
Yeah, they think it's absurd, but I think it's just a natural state of things.
Yeah.
One thing that I've actually thought about, and again, this is another one of those things that I'm not sure if I have an official opinion on. I think I mentioned it to you once or twice, Tim, but I want to know how Mr. McCaskill would respond. And again, I can't be sure even really what I'm saying, but it's a weird idea, and I want to know how you would respond. Isn't it true that the world basically already is anarchy, and people already are free to just literally do what they want? But what happened is some people took advantage of that freedom and took advantage of other people and kind of created these governments on top of the anarchy and used that to control other people. And I guess what I'm saying is, if you thought that anarchy was the best way, which it's weird for me to say this because I think I am an anarchist, but if you thought that, then what's wrong with the world now? Because isn't it already anarchy where people have just taken advantage of it in different ways? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I do think that when you look at spontaneous order, government is a form of spontaneous order that's evolved over time, net to the present nation state. But yeah, I would say that 99% of our activities are in a state of anarchy. We're talking right now. That's what we're doing right now is a form of anarchy, and nobody is to oversee and make sure we're not cursing at each other and being uncivilized. So yeah, I would say that for the most part, we do live our lives in a state of anarchy, and of course there's the mafia, and hopefully soon that I see a lot of optimism for the future because of technologies like Bitcoin and the internet and what's to come.
We don't have to get into this now, but I just want to mention it because it's interesting, and I've been thinking for a while about how we could incorporate these ideas into the show. But it's interesting that you brought up Richard Dawkins and those ideas, because I'm a creationist. Tim, I think, is a creationist, but he has a little bit of agnosticism there, maybe, where he's not too concerned about the debate. And I could be wrong, Tim, but that's what I think. And then John, I think you're the closest one that might lean towards an old Earth and evolution, but I think you would still be a creationist. Is that true?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe more agnostic would be a better...
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I'm more of the opinion that it's not a question I need to answer to live my life every day.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like I said, we don't have to talk about it now. I just thought it was interesting that you would, mention Dawkins, and maybe in the future we'll see how we can work some of these ideas into the show and relate them to Bitcoin. You're listening to the You, Me, and Bitcoin podcast. We need your help. For starters, we would love it if you would take the time to visit our website, youmeandbtc.com. There you can find a unique Bitcoin address for every single podcast and article. We would be forever grateful if you could provide some feedback by tipping your favorite content. We also have a Facebook page that needs some likes. You can find a link on our site or go straight to facebook.com/youmeandbtc. We'll keep you updated there about ourselves and any important Bitcoin news throughout the week. Lastly, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the show. You can find us on iTunes or sign up to receive email updates on our website. Thanks for your support. I wanted to move on to our smaller world, though, specifically for Amagi Metals itself. What all has it done for you? How much has it been able to benefit you and things like that?
Yeah, so it's benefited our company in many different ways. We started accepting it, I think, in November 2012. And when we started accepting it, we weren't getting that many sales. But then Bitcoin went up to $100 and then crashed. And when that happened, we started getting sales through the roof. And basically put us on the next plateau in terms of volume. So we were able to get better pricing for all of our customers, and thanks to our Bitcoin customers. And then we were able to hire an additional full-time employee, which has been dedicated to Bitcoin sales. So we can basically say that Bitcoin has created jobs more so than other people have been able to say, especially when we talk about politics. And then there's also the customer service side. The interesting thing about our Bitcoin customers compared to our other customers is that they are extremely demanding. When they pay, the payment goes through instantly, so they expect the product instantly. So that's pushed our customer service to be able to provide quicker service to our customers, and that's been great in our industry because in our industry, shipping delays can take up to a month or more, whereas we ship 3 to 5 business days after the payment is cleared. So the Bitcoin community has been pretty hard on us, but we appreciate it, and it's helped us improve our services and provide better customer service to our customers.
Right, I can imagine, and I've explained this on the show before, but the first time Tim and I bought silver, we sent a check, which you have to wait for snail mail, and then even once they get it, they got to wait 10 days for payment to clear. Mm-hmm. And then when we moved to Amagi Metals and sent Bitcoin, I remember when I first made that payment, and you think about it, and you're like, wait, I'm done now? And then within a few minutes, you get confirmation, and within a few hours, often it's shipped, and that's amazing.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and even credit card customers where payment goes through instantly, they still don't have that push to say where's my product, but the Bitcoin community has been really helpful in us providing quicker service.
Right, and I know you've been working hard at that, and I keep an eye on the forum thread that you guys have, and there are shipping complaints now and then, but you guys always figure it out. And I know when there's not complaints, you're always fast. That's how you've been for us, and that's great. I wanted to ask, I think I've heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I've heard that for a time you were the #1 Bitcoin retailer on BitPay. And I just want to know what makes you a big player. And I've been telling people, just when I've been explaining the interview to friends or whatever, I've been saying that you're the CEO of a multi-million-dollar bullion dealer. Is that a true statement?
Yes. And for our Bitcoin sales last year, we did slightly over $7 million.
Wow.
And towards the end, like November, December, we were doing over $1.5 million a month in sales, and that's what we've been maintaining since then. So, yeah, it's been great to be part of that, be one of the largest Bitcoin retail businesses in the world. And I think that it's phenomenal that Bitcoin users understand what gold and silver is compared to the dollar. So they're rather cashing out for gold and silver than U.S. dollars. And I think that it's important for a company like Amagi Metals to offer precious metals for Bitcoin. In a sense, it's backing Bitcoins for gold and silver along with every other service or product that you can convert Bitcoins into. So I think that it's an important function, and with companies like Overstock.com and Gift and those types of companies where you can pretty much buy anything, they're taking our lead away as more companies start accepting it. But we're still up there.
That's something that we've been seeing recently, is how a huge company will start to accept Bitcoin and everyone loves it, but then a week or two later, an even bigger company is stepping in, and it really is. It's great to see it grow so fast, and especially over the past year or so, it grows fast. So, and we're glad that you have been able to take part in that. In fact, another way that we've seen growth is in not just Bitcoin, but in cryptocurrency in general, because of all the other coins that are showing up. On the one hand, I haven't been able to think through things enough, and I don't really know if I have an official opinion. But on the one hand, I'm not a big fan of altcoins because of what people say, how they kind of cut into Bitcoin. Although, when you think about it, in a truly free market, then there should be able to be competing currencies and things like that. So I'm not really sure where I stand, but regardless, you've decided to take Litecoin and Dogecoin. I know there's a lot of dispute over what the correct way of saying Dogecoin is, but and we're glad to see that you're accepting them. It's still an experiment, and we'll see how things go. But the question I had is, how are you processing those? Because I know with Bitcoin, I'm pretty sure you still use BitPay, and that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, pretty fully featured. Do you have anything like that for these other coins, or do you do it manually? What do you do there?
Yeah, so we use coinpayments.net, which is kind of like BitPay, but for all different types of cryptocurrencies. The only thing is that over this weekend, I received an email saying they may be shut down because they are not an MSB and may have to apply to be an MSB to continue operations. So yeah, we're going to see what happens with them, but and as going back to whether are altcoins necessary, or are they good to have, and I would say they are wonderful to have, primarily because each one has a different idea or concept behind them, and some of them could be very innovative, and perhaps that currency will replace Bitcoin, or perhaps Bitcoin will see such the users of Bitcoin will see such a huge benefit from the innovation that the Bitcoin protocol can adopt that innovation. So I think that there is a place for altcoins that will help improve the cryptocurrency system overall. Yeah,
that's great, and that's true. Yeah, I mean, competition leads to innovation, which is something we need in currency just as much as anything else. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I guess even if people say that they will cut into the value of Bitcoin, on the one hand, that's not a bad thing, because if they're worth more, they'll have more value. On the other hand, I'm not even sure if you could say that they kind of dilute Bitcoin, because even if somebody created an altcoin that had literally zero differences, even if it was exactly the same as Bitcoin, except it ran on a different port on the internet, it's still, you wouldn't create more Bitcoins. You would just create a different set of them, and there would still only be 21 million Bitcoins, and still nobody can change that. So that, I don't know if that argument really holds water. And so, yeah, I understand what you're saying. Tim and John, we haven't really talked about altcoins in depth. We've thought about doing it. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think that makes sense?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a great idea to have altcoins, especially, I guess the Doge coins are they've kind of become like the poster child coin for the fact that you can kind of just make an altcoin about anything. And some people see that as like stupid, I guess. But I think the fact that there's Doge coins is awesome. I think the fact that you can make a currency based on whatever you want is amazing.
Definitely, and it has value from that coolness factor.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, it is cool. You said you were using a payment processor that uses all kinds of cryptocurrency. Are you thinking of taking more? For all I know, is there just a button you can click to say accept this, and you'll be able to take any cryptocurrency that you want? Is that a possibility for you?
Yeah, I mean, they already accept something like 20 different ones.
Okay.
And yeah, so, and they have the ability, I think, where users can vote on which ones they want to see next. But, and we can, but right now we're just testing the waters, before we expand into other cryptocurrencies.
Right, that makes sense. Have you noticed an increase in, like you saw with Bitcoin, the sales increased because people want to spend Bitcoin. Have you noticed any increase in sales because of these other currencies?
We have received sales from and paid in these other currencies, so yes, they're not as much as Bitcoin or other payment methods, but they're still coming through. And actually, the first weekend we started accepting Litecoin and Dogecoin, we received more Dogecoin orders than Litecoin.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
About the altcoins, people saying that it could be diluting it, I kind of just see that as you can't really, like, if you want a free kind of market thing like Bitcoin, you also have to be, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like them. Like, I love the idea that, like what John was saying before, that we can have Dogecoin that's based on an internet meme and people will trade that. I especially kind of like that one just because it pisses people off. People who hate Bitcoin hate that even more. Like, oh, this can't work. And I mean, it is. And maybe that's kind of why I like it, just because it's annoying people and it's still working. But you can't have a free market with Bitcoin. Just be like, okay, we're just Bitcoin because that's serious. That's the one that people are understanding. You can't bring up more. And well, I mean, if it's going to be free, you kind of have to let anyone who wants to do anything, even if it is Dogecoin or that the Kanye West coin that got shut down. So even if it was diluting Bitcoin, I don't think that's wrong. I mean, maybe it's a bad thing for me if I'm holding Bitcoin, but I don't see that as something wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you were saying if someone just makes up like it's exactly the same thing as Bitcoin, they just call it a different name or something like that, I'm fine with that. I don't really care too much.
Yeah, there's no such thing as a qualified free market. It's either free or it isn't free. And if everybody decides to do something in a free market, they should be able to do it, even if it's the stupidest thing in the world.
That makes sense. I mean, if things are meant to be free, if we're trying to support freedom, which I hope that all four of us are, then yeah, you gotta be free to compete, free to make stupid ideas or good ideas and things like that. So that's definitely true. I guess, just for fun, we want to know, what, besides Bitcoin, what do you, or maybe things that are related to Bitcoin, but not Bitcoin, what are you interested in? What kind of things do you do? How do you spend your time when you're not working with Bitcoin and Amagi?
Well, I'm on the alumni board of the Foundation for Economic Education, so I'm helping them. And also advisory board member for Individuals for Capitalism. So I haven't really put too much time into that organization, but I think I will be in the near future. And then other than that, I mean, I love snowboarding and I love the outdoors and camping, and I live out here in Denver, so I get to do a lot of that. So when I'm not in the office, I'm doing that.
If Satoshi was never born and there was no such thing as Bitcoin, would you be a professional snowboarder?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm a borderline ski bum. If I didn't have my business, I'd probably be up in the mountains snowboarding every day. So definitely.
That's pretty sweet.
So, yeah. Although, I guess if I didn't have my business, I'd be a bum on the street, so who knows?
I have probably just two more things before we close. One thing, this is actually, I don't know how much time or if any you've spent on the IRC channel for Bitcoin OTC. OTC is over the counter. It's just a casual marketplace where people make deals with themselves. No moderators or anything well, I mean, there's moderators, but nobody runs the trades. Somebody there, a pretty well-known trader, his name's JCP Ham. He wants me to ask you about KYC with the bullion industry. I guess when I think about it, I mean, I've registered an account with you, but I've never had to give you too much information about who I am. And even registering an account is optional. You can check out as a guest. I mean, I guess you need an address, but I've never had to prove my identity like I've had to do with other Bitcoin companies. How much do you have to deal with KYC? Know your customer. Is that a problem? Do you think it could become a problem?
It could be, yes. So we are not an MSB because precious metals and jewelry companies do not have to apply or register as an MSB. However, we must have AML and KYC policies in place, which we do, and you can see them on our website. And we do have to fill out, if somebody pays us cash over $10,000, we do have to fill out, all the correct IRS forms. As for Bitcoin, it's a little bit up in the air. So what we're doing right now is if people are purchasing currency, which are coins or legal tender or sovereign coins made by various countries, and pay over $10,000 in Bitcoin, then they have to fill out the form. But if they're paying with, if they're buying bars, so they're not buying currency, then they don't have to fill out the form. And that's just because the regulations are a little bit hazy. We don't want to over-regulate and prevent our customers from doing business with us. But we're still vigilant about keeping those records. As for we don't really have to, when you provide your shipping information, that's pretty much all the identifying information that we need.
It's pretty nice to still have that freedom because, with the exchanges and everything, it can be a pain to verify and not just annoying, but really a negative force for a lot of the people in the community that want to remain anonymous for various reasons. So yeah, it's good that it's still relatively lax, and we hopefully can stay that way.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think that's going to be the case for too much longer, but we will see.
Since we're thinking about it, and this is huge with Bitcoin now, because it's growing so much and becoming popular, we've had to comment and think about regulation quite a bit on the show, because they're trying to regulate it. And I think based on what I know about you, you would generally be against regulation. Is that true?
I am not against regulation. I'm a huge fan of regulation. However, I think that when I talk about regulation, it's very different from other people who talk about regulation. I'm a big fan of the market regulating, and I think that it's the free market is the cruelest regulator of all.
So these talks about, when the government wants to, I guess I can't be sure what exactly they want to do. I'm sure they want to tax what they can. They probably want to keep an eye on large Bitcoin transfers. And when I say regulate, they probably want to investigate, just like with cash. If it's over 10,000, they normally want to know what's going on. And they probably want to try and do that with Bitcoin too. Would you be for or against, if I described regulation in that way? If they watched the network, and I know this isn't technically possible with Bitcoin usually, But if they were able to regulate it, and if a transaction was too big, if they forced you to explain what you're doing with that money, would you be for or against something like that?
Oh, absolutely opposed to it.
Okay. Like I said, and like you were saying, there's a lot of different ways to regulate, but I think we would all agree that that sort of regulation isn't what we want. Is that true, Tim and John?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, when you start getting into stuff like that, that's when you start getting into, like, what happened to Shrem, which I was surprised whenever he was on Let's Talk Bitcoin. He's like, yeah, I love government regulation and stuff. I'm like, at least that's what it sounded like he was saying. Like, maybe he was saying, like, I just like regulation in the free market, but that's not what it sounded like. He's like, yeah, I mean, again, maybe he's saying that because he could possibly be going to jail. He doesn't really want to be saying anything inflammatory right now, but it gets a little bit into a gray area as far as I understand it with that kind of movement to like verify certain addresses or just deny transactions to be put through from certain addresses.
Oh, well, I went snowboarding with him last year, and I asked him, are you an anarchist? He said, I wouldn't say that I am. I think he's okay with small government or some form of regulation.
Okay.
Right, yeah, it's been tough. There's so many people in the Bitcoin community who say that we kind of need regulation because we don't know what to do right now. Because the way things are now, people don't know. I mean, am I an MSB or is this legal what I'm doing? And people don't know. They say if we have regulation, they'll be able to move forward. And on the one hand, that's true. I mean, if people are afraid of the government and they're not innovating because of it, then if regulation is going to help that, then that might be true for a while. But, I mean, the problem is regulation. They shouldn't be afraid in the first place. They should just be free to do what they think they need to do. And they should be free to innovate without fear in the first place. And then once there is regulation, sure, maybe it helps for a while, but in the end, the definition of regulation is almost the same thing as the definition of limitation. It holds you back in some way, so.
Oh, yeah, I mean, especially if they say, you have to be an MSB. Well, that means you have to spend $75 million to become an MSB. That's absurd.
Yeah, and that's something I can barely wrap my head around just because of my small scope. If you got to spend that kind of money to do things like that, I mean, I guess you have investors and everything, but how does anybody even want to do that if you got to deal with all that stuff? And even once you're registered, you got to have a whole entire legal team to make sure you still don't do anything illegal.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll keep an eye on the regulation. And I mean, it's going to happen, but I guess part of the reason we praise Bitcoin as much as we do is because even if they do regulate it,
it's going to be too late.
Right, yeah, and they can say what they want, but with Bitcoin, you don't have to, they can't, like we always say, they can't force you to do anything with your money that you don't want to do. And I mean, sometimes because Bitcoin is not entirely anonymous, as much as we like to think it is, you might have to take precautions and be careful with your money. And, if you have to mix it, if you have to use CoinJoin or whatever, but they can't force you to do anything with your money that you don't want to. And that's pretty awesome. Before we finish up, one last thing, and you're actually, I mean, like I said, you're our first guest on the show, but one thing that we're hoping to make, a bit of a tradition or something, and we've already done this with ourselves, each of us, maybe actually not all three of us, but we like to tell personal stories. Tim's story was just about our miner that we ordered, and just told our story about how we started mining and everything. So yeah, if you have any personal stories, if it's funny, I'm hoping someday, I haven't explained it yet, but I had a pretty funny experience about when it's not that I got scammed, but I found a scammer and I foiled his plan, and it was kind of intense on the chat room when all that went down. And so yeah, just any kind of personal story that, if you have anything interesting, anything like that.
Yeah, definitely bumped into some stories like that, and I can tell you a recent one. I actually have a friend who accepts Bitcoin for massages. She's a professional massage therapist. And so the first time I sent her Bitcoin for a massage, she sent me her address, and instead of sending me her private key or her public key, she sent me her private key.
Oh, wow.
So I texted her back and I said, you sent me your private key rather than your public key. That's, the wrong one. You don't want to give that to anyone, not even your friends or family. And so then she sent me the correct address. And then I did the math backwards, and instead of sending her something like, 0.06 bitcoins, I sent her 6 bitcoins or something like that. So it was a mistake on both ends. I had to ask for the money back.
Yeah, that's actually something that hopefully we can see improved. In some ways, Bitcoin can be really simple in some ways. It can be really technical if you want it to be. But just the user experience, with addresses and things like that can be a bit clunky. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to see improvements there. We've seen some helpful things with like the crypto kit that just integrates into your browser, and the payment protocol, which is coming up, should help with a lot of that. But that's something that can be difficult in some ways, and hopefully we can see that worked out.
Yeah, I think, every day new technologies are coming out that lower the transaction costs to use cryptocurrencies, which are really beneficial.
Yeah, that's great. And that's something I say too, is you can talk about political benefits and anything all day, but even if Bitcoin was a lot more like the dollar, it still has convenience and ease of use. I mean, even if there's no cryptography or anything like that, it's just really easy and really cheap to send money anywhere all the time. So, and that's one of the important things besides all this other stuff that we love.
Yeah. That's
exactly the reason that we ended up using it for bullion, is because compared to a check, it's just super convenient and easy. I mean, that's about all I have. Tim and John, last chance if there's anything you want to mention.
Oh, I guess I should have asked this a while ago, but Stephen, whenever you first heard about it from your friend, what was the US dollar value at per Bitcoin?
$9.
$9, okay.
I think, yeah.
Okay, so that was probably a little bit before, like a few months before I got into it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it quickly went to 13 and then, started skyrocketing from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got in around a little bit below 20, and then when it skyrocketed, I ended up selling it at like 87, or some of it, because I was like, okay, it can't go any higher than this.
Oh, you were
that
wrong.
was through Charlie Shrem's company. That was through...
Oh, yeah, BitInstant.
Yeah, going to MoneyGram places to send it.
Yeah. Good old days.
Yeah. Did you have any money in Mt. Gox? Or
oh, yeah.
Did you ever do anything with Mt. Gox?
I did, actually, but I stopped using Mt. Gox back last June, and actually bank wires from Mt. Gox is what triggered our bank accounts to be shut down last year. How the banks found out that we were, accepting Bitcoin, and got unhappy with that. But yeah, so I would say that people who did not see Mt. Gox collapsing or having trouble, I don't know what they were thinking or why they didn't see it coming.
The only one of us here who had money left in there was John. I think you said, about half a Bitcoin that you lost?
Yeah, it was half a Bitcoin. The only reason I had anything in there in the first place was because it was Bitcoin that I had made from flipping Bitcoin that I had bought for dollars and then buying more when it went down and then selling it when it went up. So I had some of my profits in Mt. Gox, and the only reason I had it in Mt. Gox was because they had that feature where you could set up a transaction and it would just happen when the exchange rate got to the point that you set it at, whether you were online or not. So I had it there just because I was flipping stuff on Mt. Gox. But yeah, losing half a Bitcoin does still kind of suck, even though I guess I could afford to lose it. Yeah,
that's convenience is what it really is. And I think it was, I want to say Eric Voorhees. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was him who wrote the paper. Yeah. And he said, he admitted it. It was my fault. I mean, I should have seen it coming too. And, but it's just for convenience. That's why people did it. So,
yeah. The funniest part about my leaving stuff in there was that probably about the week before they shut down withdrawals. I was like, I should probably take some of that out of there just in case. But I was a little bit too slow on that one.
Just keep an eye on the recovery efforts, because I think we can all be certain that it won't be 100%, but you might be able to squeeze a little bit of value out of that somehow.
Yeah.
I've heard they're working on this thing called Gox Coin, maybe, which might be some sort of replacement, and I don't know, we'll see. But yeah, just you might be able to squeeze something out of that if you take initiative. So
yeah.
Anyway, I suppose that'll close us now, maybe finally. Hey, thanks a lot for joining us, Mr. McCaskill, and it means a lot, and we're excited to finally have a new voice on the show, and hopefully everyone else will like it too. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to episode 11. We hope you enjoyed having Stephen McCaskill on the show. Don't forget to visit our website, youmeandbtc.com. We'd love a Facebook like or a Twitter follow as well, if you're willing. And join us next Thursday